This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and holiday times bring gaming laptops to mind. This is the Alienware M17R5. All those letters and numbers really mean something now because Alienware's lineup of gaming laptops is getting pretty broad. We have the 15-inch, we have the 17-inch, and now we have the X series in addition to the M. The X series is the more posh, more expensive. But the thing to keep in mind this time around is that this is the AMD Ryzen line. You can get this with AMD graphics or NVIDIA RTX graphics, your choice. And the good thing about it is it's still pretty slim and stylish. It is an Alienware after all. If you like that kind of futuristic kind of look, they certainly have it. And tanky build quality, 7.3 pounds, which is like 3.3 kilograms. Anyway, it's a lot less expensive than the X series, and you're still getting a lot of performance, which is why we're going to look at it now. So before we get into the processors, let's talk about the core experience, or the other stuff you get besides the processor inside and the GPU. You have a 17.3-inch display, and there's no 2K option like there is with the X series from Alienware, but you do have your choice of 3 different full HD displays, 165 Hz, 360 Hz, and mind-boggling now, there's a 480 Hz full HD display, so like you see, CSGO type players will like that. And what we have, which is a 4K 120 Hz. These are all IPS displays. They're all 3 millisecond response times, except for the 360 Hz display, which is 1 millisecond. Either way, you're really good. And the 4K, I'm happy it's 120 Hz, obviously, because you can still use that for gaming. That's a nice refresh rate. But boy, the color gamut and the brightness and that are very nice, even if it's not OLED, okay? But it's still, you know, you don't have that contrast ratio, but otherwise you will not be heartbroken when you're playing games. And obviously that display is there for people who still buy Alienwares for content creation because they want a big, heavy-duty, powerful laptop for content creation. Inside, because this is AMD, you get a USB-C port, but does not support Thunderbolt. And you look to Intel if you really must have Thunderbolt. And we have Realtek for Wi-Fi, and we've got that for Ethernet. Well, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, you've got Wi-Fi 6E on board. They both work just great, so that's fine with me. And with the keyboard, you have your usual choice with Alienware Zone RGB, PerKey RGB, or the Cherry MX Ultra mechanical keyboard that we have, which is a very low travel mechanical keyboard, which I love the feeling of, and it is a kind of musical keyboard. Each key makes a doing, 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 doing sound. You know, I've shown that in other Alienware reviews with the mechanical keyboard. So you have to be used to hearing little musical notes, shall we say. It's fine. It's a very nice keyboard. And of course you have Alien FX lighting. As always, you can customize the ring around the back, the Alien head logo, different colored lighting, turn it all off if you want to do that. So the bling you would expect from a gaming laptop in a kind of like tasteful Alienware way, I suppose you could say. It's available only in Dark Side of the Moon. There's no lunar light color, the lighter color. And yes, it's a 17-inch laptop with no number pads. So boo for those of you who hate designs that don't have number pads, whether you're a number cruncher or you use a number pad in games, and yay if you don't care. And we've got HDMI 2.1 ports, so that's nice to have. And if you need DisplayPort, you can do it via the USB-C port, which supports both PowerShare and DisplayPort 1.4. Now, most of the ports are out the back. That's nothing new for this Alienware chassis that we've seen. You do get Ethernet on one side, which is a little strange, and you do have a USB-A on the right side, 2 of them actually, so right-handed people will probably complain and just plug your mouse in the back instead. We have a 720p webcam. You get Windows Hello only with a 360 Hz full HD display option. And you have 2 2.5 watt stereo speakers. They're okay sounding. Given the size of this chassis, I would have hoped for a little more bass, but not terrible by any means. Take off the bottom cover. It's Phillips head screws around here, pry off from the front, and then slide it a bit forward. And there's our metal cover. There's the underside of the metal cover. And here we have, well, obviously, the 2 big fans. Still, we have the inverted motherboard situations. If you want to replace the CPU and GPU, well, you're going to have to take this board out here. 2 M.2 SSD slots, and we have 1 SSD in ours, but they do give you the heatsink cover for a second one in case you should put a second one in, which is pretty nice. Some nice rigid standoffs over here to keep the bottom cover from feeling flexy at all. It's metal, so it shouldn't get that flexy, but that's nice. And we do have our 2 RAM slots right there and the socketed Wi-Fi card on board. 2 of the stereo speakers right over here, the whole modules, and the 97 watt-hour battery, which is a super high capacity battery, obviously, but then again, you're talking about a powerful gaming laptop, so don't expect miracles here. All right, let's get to performance. So this year, 2022, Ryzen is not beating the pants off of Intel 12th generation, and it'll get more interesting with Intel 13th generation, but then we'll see a new gen of Ryzen coming up. So you have your Ryzen 6000 CPUs. We have the top of the line model, which is the Ryzen 9 6900HX processor. And if you want to save a few bucks, there's also the Ryzen 7 6800H processor. Now, these are good processors in terms of thermals still. I would still give them an edge over Intel when it comes to that. This gets a bit less loud than the Intel models from Alienware, for example. It will still see in games. Now, sorry, it's always more of a challenge to get CPU temperature monitoring going with AMD processors, but you can see I had hardware info running in the background, the temperature like for Apex. It did peak the processor at, well, 99 to 100 degrees centigrade, which is max pretty much allowable there, but the average was in the 70s centigrade, so that's not bad for them. You're not saving a lot in terms of power consumption, though. 2022 for both platforms has been throwing more power at processors and GPUs to get more performance out of them. Now for the GPU, you can choose what we have in this model, which is the top of the line Radeon RX 6850M with 12 gigabytes of RAM. That's the XT GPU. Or if you want to save some money, again, you can get the RX 6700M. But you can also get NVIDIA GPUs and mix and match if you want. Anything from an RTX 3050 Ti all the way up to a 3080 Ti and all the possible increments in between. And yes, the Ti has 16 gigs of VRAM on board. So it's nice to have that choice. We have the all AMD configuration. Now, in theory, our top-of-the-line GPU should compete with the RTX 3080, sometimes maybe even the 3080 Ti. And now, obviously, it's going to depend on the game. Some are more well optimized for AMD than others, and some, like Far Cry 6, depend a whole lot more on the CPU than the GPU compared to other AAA titles, for example. But I would say, roughly, I did see it perform close enough to an RTX 3080. And again, it uses about the same amount of power, sometimes a little bit more, this GPU. And one nice thing about the Alienware laptops is that they are running high wattage GPUs, so you're not seeing any low wattage slumming it to try to help battery life. This is not about helping battery life, this laptop at all, obviously. It's not a thin and light portable thing. So overall, I found it more restful in the ears in terms of thermal performance. One thing I did notice that Alienware's settings for performance, if you set it from normal to performance, boost that up a lot, it didn't make a huge difference in frame rates. And also the choices for your power plan balancing are pretty limited on this. And there's not as much customization as we see with Intel when it comes to those things in Alienware Command Center. But all in all, given the fact that this laptop decked out with the top-of-the-line AMD GPU, the top-of-the-line mobile AMD CPU, a 4K display is like $2,250 right now on Dell's website. That's not bad. If you're looking at something comparably equipped, only, well, Intel land, but other than that, in terms of horsepower and 4K display, you're looking at closer to $4,000 with an X17 series machine. So, well, that's a pretty good buy if you're wanting to buy an Alienware. And as always, the build quality on these, the choice of different parts, the sales, particularly that Dell has, make it pretty compelling. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.